Hey there, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to show you how to visually inspect and test via Sonnax vac test machine a 4L60E stator pump cover to confirm or deny that it is serviceable and can be reinstalled. Alright, now this particular stator support is out of a 2010 Chevy Colorado 4L60E, so late model, and I haven't done any kind of machine work to it because I want to confirm or deny that it's actually good to use before I spend any more time and or money on it. So every single one of these 4L60Es, nearly without exception, needs some sort of resurfacing work here on the working surfaces because they're always scored up. You know, if it's really mild, you can maybe get away with some sandpaper, you know, 800 to 1000 grit, but that's really rare. Maybe 1 out of every 50 or 60 is like that. Most of them need to be completely resurfaced, and in the case of the pump body, which is the other half of the assembly, has to be milled to depth so that the clearance is restored to factory specification between the pump body's deck surface and the top of the rotor and slide, which is 1 to 2 thousandths for the slide, 1 to 1.5 thousandths for the rotor. So as far as visual inspection, I'll cover that first, then we'll get into testing. All of these are, you know, all of these stators are subject to sealing ring groove wear here in the bore. So you always want to check that. So usually the first thing I'll look at, and I want to make sure that there's no sealing ring grooves cut in, because if there are, then you're going to have shifting issues. You're going to have either flare shifting from 2 to 3, delayed engagements into forward, or, you know, other kind of late harsh shifting or erratic shifting, and eventually you'll burn up your forwards and your 3/4 clutch pack, you know, if the wear is progresses enough. So that's the first thing I check. Next, you want to check your engagement splines here on the stator, on this half of it, and just to make sure they're in good shape. And then from there, I'll check my journal surfaces. Now, like I said, I haven't done anything with this one other than take it out of the jet wash and dry it off, so you see a little bit of surface rust, no big deal. But you want to make sure that there's no heavy scoring here, okay? You can see the wear marks, and that's no big deal. A little bit of sandpaper will clean this up really nice. Again, I like to use between 800 and 1000 grit. You can bump it up to 1500 grit if you'd like as well. But other than that, as long as there's no serious gouges here or no chips or chunks missing out of it, you're fine. Okay. Same with the bushing surface. Okay, you want to make sure that the bushing surface is in good shape and there's nothing that would otherwise prevent you from installing a new bushing. All right, make sure your flange here, where the stator's pressed onto the stator support, is not fractured in any way, shape, or form. Okay, and then also check for any indications that for whatever reason this stator may have been removed at one point from the stator support. One of the concerns when it comes to these is the fact that the stator and the stator support are not perfectly flush, meaning you have an offset here or out of round condition. It's not square. And what usually happens is people will, you know, because maybe either this is no good or the stator's no good, they'll try to replace one thing or the other, and they'll beat this out with a hammer and beat the new or replacement stator in with a hammer. And it looks like it's installed flush to the naked eye, but when you chuck it up on a lathe, on a like a dead true chuck, and it's spinning around, okay, I mean, it'll wobble. And I'm exaggerating it, obviously, but you'll see it. And when the machinist starts to cut the surface here, you'll see an asymmetrical pattern where when you know, the cutter goes across the surface, you'll see one side is, you know, has more taken off of it than the other. So you want to make sure that that's not happening, and really the only way to do that reliably is to put this on a lathe. Alright, next, just look for structural problems, cracks, you know, any of these little plugs missing. Okay, make sure none of your orifice capsules are missing. They all need to be there. You know, don't lose sleep over that. That's extremely rare. The other thing you want to make certain is that your pressure blow-off ball, little ball and spring here, this is for overpressure. Make sure they're installed. Okay, this thing's not going to do anything if they're missing. And then same with the filter screen here. Now this is obviously missing. I mean, these are consumables, and a new one will come in the kit. But you don't want to forget that on reassembly. All right, So if there's anything else that I'm missing, I'll annotate the video. But like I said, I want to make sure that I can test this and at least let me know that all of these circuits are sealing as they should. So when we go to test, we're going to test 4 locations. Okay, I have 3, 4. Okay, we're going to test 4 locations. We're going to test the lockup valve's inboard sealing area, this spool here, and then we're going to test the outboard spool here at this orifice, at this location. We're going to stick vacuum right over this orifice. All right, and then for the boost and pressure regulator side, we're going to test the PR valve itself, and then we're going to test the boost circuit. Now, I always replace the stock, or pre-existing boost valve and sleeve with the Sonnax boost valve and sleeve kit. I believe Sonnax actually makes 2 different kits. One is O-ringed, one is not. And then there is an early and a late model boost valve. The early models are for everything from 1993 up to, I think, 2006 early. And then late 2006 or 2007, they went with the late style, which you can readily distinguish by looking at the little plug or little stub shaft here at the end. All right, the late models, it's very, very short. The early models, it's much taller. And I know I used totally the wrong word to describe that thing. I never get right on what exactly I should call it. But anyway, point is that you don't want to mix and match. Now in the Sonnax HP1 Performance Pack, they actually only give you the late model style, and then they use a shim, okay, or a spacer to kind of bridge the gap, and it goes right underneath and kind of sits right over top, this little nub here, and that allows you to seat the boost assembly at the proper depth for the early models, using a late model valve and sleeve. Alright, so if you had not used the Sonnax vac test equipment before, or if you just purchased yours and it's kind of fresh out of the box, the first thing you want to make sure you do is calibrate it. Alright, so in order to do that, what you need to do, and let me kind of get that out of the way for a minute, what you need to do is you need to take your hoses. Okay, you're going to have a hose here on the test fitting, and then you're going to have your other hose that's going out to your air pump. Okay, and Sonnax doesn't sell you the air pump that you can buy at Harbor Freight or Home Depot or wherever. Any decent air pump will do. So in the package, you'll have the test machine itself. It'll come with a test block and a little test gasket. Okay, and that this gasket will seal off the given circuit like this while you go ahead and put your test block, and then as the thing's operating, it will show you what your inches of lift are here on the gauge. Alright, pretty simple device. So first thing we'll do is calibrate it. So if you have the hose plugged into the test block, take it out and stick it in the calibration receptacle over here. Okay, make sure it's seated. And then you're going to turn the machine on. And when you turn the machine on, if it's fresh out of the box, the needle's going to be reading somewhere between 0 and 10 inches of lift. All right, you're going to adjust the pump valve until it reads right at 5 inches steady. Okay, then what you're going to do is you're going to comb over here with a finger, and you're going to plug your calibration port. Okay, when you do that, you're going to see the gauge jump all the way up to between 20 and 30 inches. Then you're going to adjust your bleeder valve so that it's reading a steady 25 inches of lift. And then you want to just double check it a couple times. Make sure that when you take the finger away, it drops back down to 5. Put the finger on, goes right up to 25. And once you've done that a couple of times, and you're satisfied it's consistent, then you can begin the testing. So we'll turn the pump on. Now I just used this thing, so I know it's calibrated. But as you can see, it's right at 5 inches. We'll put our finger on the calibration port, and we're reading right at 25 inches. Take it away, we're back down to 5. Up to 25. Finger away, we're back to 5. Okay, so now we know the machine's calibrated correctly, we can begin the testing. So just plug it back into the test block, and then we'll start here. I'll do the torque converter clutch control valve, or a lockup valve, whatever you want to call it. Alright, we're going to test here on the inboard side, or inboard spool. Then we're going to test the outboard spool, which is actually right over here on this orifice. All right, now let me flip this over. You're going to see a couple of ports plugged. Okay, this has to be plugged when you're testing the TCC valve for the inboard side, and then this has to be plugged when you're testing the boost valve for sealing at this location here, at this circuit here. All right, I'm going to go in. I'm just going to put the little gasket there. All right, turn on the machine. Oop. I screwed that up. Let me actually put my finger on the port. All right, well, it looks like we're just shy of 15 inches, 14 and a half inches. Okay, I'm going to try it again. Okay, 14 and a half inches. 14 and a half inches is fine. All right, next, we're going to go ahead and we'll test this orifice. We just put the gasket like so. All right, it's going to draw a vacuum. We're at 9 inches. Now we got to take a finger and we got to stroke the valve inboard and plug at the same time the entryway with the finger. It seals it off. Okay. We're stroking the valve inboard. All right, it's in as far as I can get it. It's 19 and a half inches. So back to 10. 19 inches. All right, so far so good. All right. So 14 and a half inches inboard, 19 and a half inches outboard. Now we're going to test the pressure regulator valve. Now, one thing that I need to point out, in fact, I'm going to shut this off just real quick. When you test the pressure regulator valve, when you install the valve itself, you need to make sure that you have access to this little port on the valve, this little orifice. All right, you see it right there? Right there. Okay, you're going to take your pencil eraser and you're going to plug that port. Because if you don't do that, then all the vacuum is going to escape out of there. Okay, all you need to do is cover that circuit right there, rectangular in shape. Okay, it's going to draw a vacuum where it's, I don't know, what is that, 4 inches of lift? All right, now I'm going to come with my pencil. And we're at 10 and a half inches. All right, now in the event you forget about that port, not a big deal. You don't have to take the valve out. Just grab some needle nose pliers and then just gently grab your valve and just rotate it until you can get that port, accessible to you. And that's it. All right. Now I have the original boost valve and sleeve installed because I'm curious to see what kind of reading I'm going to get. All right, so you want to lay your gasket so that it covers this kind of eccentric shaped circuit entirely. All right, it's easy to kind of leave it exposed on where it kind of juts out there and you wonder why you're not drawing any vacuum. All right, remember we got to plug a port here on the underside as well. So we'll go ahead and turn the machine back on. All right, we got our port plugged and we're sitting at 9 inches of lift. Just shy of 9 inches, actually like 8 3/4. All right, port unplugged, port plugged. 8 3/4, 8 7/8. So what did we say up top? We had 9 1/2, 8 7/8, 14, and 19. Alright, so I have another valve here on the bench. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this pressure regulator valve out and install this other one to see if anything changes. See if I can get this to produce a little bit more vacuum for me beyond what it was producing. Hey, I really don't care about the boost valve and sleeve because we're going to install the Sonnax 4L60E LB1 in here, and that will address any concerns about leakage at the boost valve location. But the pressure regulator valve, I don't have, you know, an equivalent. Alright, so let's take a look at this valve real quick. Just dry it off. So from a visual perspective, if you don't have a Sonnax vac test machine, you can actually check this visually and physically. It's not as reliable, and you know, a lot of it's depending on how good you are technique-wise, but essentially what you do is you drop it back in, and then you try to jostle it, okay? And like I said, this, I don't ever do this because, I mean, I have the machine, but the idea is you know, maybe you lift it up a little bit and you try to shake it and you see if there's any kind of play. At least that's what I've read. And I'll be honest, unless there's so much wear that it's actually noticeable, I don't know how valuable that is, but I did want to share it in case, you know, somebody else out there knows how to do that, or at least has heard of it. Alright, now let me get this valve back here and we'll take a look at it from a visual physical inspection standpoint. Okay, we tested this spool. This is the spool that was of concern to us. Okay, but we also see on the lands here, there's some wear on these lands. Alright, how concerning this is? I'll be honest. I've seen a lot better. This looks worn to me. Okay, so we have this valve sitting on the bench. It's not as worn. I mean, they're all going to have a little bit of wear here. And, you know, you could use a micrometer to measure this spool and compare it to, say, again, another good used valve. But, and maybe I'll do that once we're done testing, but I'm curious to see what we end up with. So we have our PR spring, our boost spring. Put them in there. And then our boost valve and sleeve. Okay, it goes just like this. Alright, and then recall we want our little orifice visible. So again, it's like I'm already forgetting. So I'm going to try to get it so this orifice is accessible right here. And it's like it did not work out that way, but before I add the springs, I'm going to just go ahead and turn it. And my hands are so slippery with WD-40, it might not be the easiest thing in the world for me to do right now. It might be I just use the pliers. Yeah, I'll just use the pliers once we're all done. Once we got everything in there. Alright. So boost valve. And then just get your snap ring kind of in position like this. And your pliers. And just seat it on in. Alright, double check it. And then go ahead and grab your needle nose. And just carefully turn until that little orifice is accessible. Alright, let's go ahead and do our test and see what we come up with. wipe the surface a little bit. I assemble these, these pumps and valve bodies with WD-40, so WD-40 is all over the place, soaking everything up. All right, I think I'm gonna get this a little bit more accessible. Should be good. Go on vacuum, 2 inches. Now I'll come with the pencil eraser. Okay, that's stronger. 13 inches. So, definitely making some progress. Alright, and this pencil eraser is not perfectly flat either. So, I guess do the best you can to find a pencil eraser that's perfectly flat, or at least, doesn't vary too much on the surface. Okay, 13 inches is a lot better than what we were seeing before. I think we were less than 10 inches. So, I have a few other valves I'm going to test offline, but assuming I can get something either between 13 and 15, that's what I'll run with. If this is the best I can do for a stock application, this is perfectly fine. Now for high performance, if this was going into some sort of street strip or heavy duty towing and hauling, something like that, then I would probably just replace the pump cover. This particular transmission, is being a 2010, is going to take an input speed sensor, so you can never mix and match pump cover stators between ISS and non-ISS pumps, and you can't mix the pumps and the drums up either. When I'm talking about the input drum and the input shaft specifically. All right, make sure you never do that. You always want to keep your ISS input drum / shaft and your ISS stator support and stator together. They're a match set. You cannot mix and match them, or you'll have all kind of issues. So just, I guess, one more thing to look out for. And I mentioned it in other videos too, but I'll mention it here. The other thing I'll make mention of is, and this really doesn't pertain to pumps specifically, but 2009 and up 4L60Es, which this is one of, given it's a 2010, are completely incompatible with any 2008 model year vehicles and older. Okay, so if you're trying to, swap in a used transmission good because yours went out, and you have a 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13 model year vehicle, you have to stick with a 09 and up 4L60E. Okay, it will not work if you try to shoehorn a 93 to 08 model year unit in there. I mean, there's some other incompatibilities across some other different vintages, like for example 93, 94 are technically not compatible with 95 model year vehicles, but you can adapt them to work. Okay, it takes some, I guess it takes enough adaptation to where you would just rebuild your pre-existing transmission versus adapt another one, but you could do it if you had to. You can make a, say a 97 or 98 or, 99 and up work with a 01 through 05 or early 06 if you had to, again with the same kind of adaptation. It's a pump, input drum, shaft, torque converter, and to some extent valve body or plate, but not really. The main things you need to swap over are going to be your pump, your input drum and shaft, and your torque converter. And I think the flex plates are different, but that's beyond the scope of the transmission. But as far as testing and evaluating a stator support, stator assembly for reuse, for serviceability, via Sonnax's VAC test machine, as well as visual testing and inspection, or scrutiny, this is kind of how we do it. All right, so I'm good with this in a stock application. As far as 13 inches, that's fine. I mean, I've seen them actually come in less, like 12, 11, and the only thing was burnt was the 3/4s, and there's a myriad of reasons for that, so I'm comfortable with it. But in a performance deal, then I would just simply replace this cover and stator assembly with something that gives me at least 15 inches. All right, so we walked through all the different locations you're going to test. We're going to have this resurfaced so it's perfectly flat and true. There's no reason to take the stator out unless you have to swap it, and again, you want to do that on a shop press. All right, we'll clean up the journals, physically clean it again one more time, and then you know, the other things you want to check for the bore here for your ISS O-ring and your threads. If there's scoring here, which is almost never, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen one of these bores themselves bad, then you run the risk of installing an O-ring and having it break on you. Then you'll have all kind of gear ratio error or ISS codes. It'll leak there, and that's no good. Okay, we'll replace this pickup seal for the filter, and we'll put a new filter screen in with an O-ring here in the back once this all goes back together. All right. If there's anything else that I did not touch upon, you know, this is the pressure relief ball here for overpressure conditions. You never really have to take this out. I mean, you can if you want, just don't forget to put it back in. All right, if there's anything else I'm forgetting or I just don't mention or be worth making you aware of, I'll do so via annotations. But that is the video. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you have any other 4L60E specific topics you'd like me to dive a little bit deeper into, just, you know, put a suggestion in the comments, and I'll do what I can to prioritize it and get it there on the channel for you. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching as always. Glad to have you. Enjoy the rest of your day or evening, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video.